And here we are, another lovely Wednesday live stream talking about a new release movie. Now, I need to clear something up, everybody. Um, Bring Her Back is not, just the name of the film we're discussing tonight. It's also popular fan demand for Katie Glidewell, the blonde in front.
Hey, there you go.
I waited all day to say that.
I was gonna say you've been sitting on that. You've been sitting on that one, haven't you?
This is my favorite one ever! Yay!
You're internet famous.
At least the beginning. Let's see. Yeah.
It's gonna be a very interesting conversation tonight because I think we're gonna have a wide range of perspectives on this film, which is the second film, the sophomore effort from Danny and Michael Philippou, who in 2023 gave us Talk to Me, which, Katie, we saw it was your second time, I think, seeing it, but we saw it at the Music Box here in Chicago with the Philippou brothers actually in attendance doing a Q&A, and we met them afterwards, and it was very cool. And I was very heavily impacted by that movie. It was one of my favorites of the year. I know this follow-up is on your list, very high up there. Mark, I have no idea where you stand on this movie. Mark, the movie man Krawcheck of the Spoiler Room podcast and Special Mark Productions. I slid that intro right in there.
Nice. That was good. That was slick.
Why, thank you. So, Katie, you're over the moon. I am firmly under the moon, looking up, wondering why. Mark, yes. Where are you?
I'm on the land, looking above and below the moon. I'm kind of in the middle with this one. Okay. I gave it a middle rating, a rating enough to where I recommended, early show for some horror fans and such, but there were some glaring things with it that for me, maybe it's just because I've been watching some extreme horror lately, but there are some things with it, and especially some decisions they made that were just a bit bigger head scratchers than I would have liked for it. Some decisions made, but I felt that same way with Talk to Me. Talk to Me, I gave it like 3, and I think gave it the same rating, 3.5, to where I was, I enjoyed it, but there were decisions made with it that just I didn't quite care for. But maybe it's just the old horror guy in me. I don't know. But there were some things that they did there as well that I was just like, I mean, I get what they're going for. Don't get me wrong, and people's personal tastes. I get, especially some of the younger folks out there, or those with different horror tastes or consume different various horrors. They feel more strongly about Bring Her Back. But for me, I was like, yeah, it was entertained. I just had some questions that weren't answered.
Okay, well, we'll probably get into at least some of that, because I've got many questions that were not answered. And I hate to say this, but most of them have to do with what happened in the last 25 minutes of this movie. I saw this film 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. It's been a crazy 2 weeks, and I was thinking back on it. I remember moments, character beats, ideas from this movie, but I am completely blank when it comes to how this thing ended. So I'm sure that once we start talking about it, and we do have the spoiler banner up, everyone, then it'll start coming back to me like, oh, that's right. That's what happened. But it's strange because I remember like everything about Talk to Me. And my feeling is I appreciate Bring Her Back, but I feel like this is the movie that should have been the film that came out first, because I think Talk to Me is a much more effective horror movie. I feel like the Philippous in this one were trying to, in their second movie, do that elevated thing where it's really, quote unquote, about something bigger. And in doing so, they zeroed in on some of the more dramatic aspects at the sacrifice, I think, of some of the supernatural scary elements. Now, that could just be because there was that expectation set by Talk to Me. But yeah, I felt like this should have been the first one and Talk to Me should have been the second. Also, there is that, this is no fault of theirs, at least I don't think, but there's always kind of like playful non-answering of the question, is Bring Her Back a sequel to Talk to Me? And I've heard people like publicists say, well, it could take place in the same universe. I'm like, yeah, because there's like, demons and stuff in it, but that does not count in the least. And also, they're making Talk to Me 2, which is supposed to come out like next year or the year after that. And which is a profound disappointment, because I get it. The first movie came out, it was a critical and kind of a hit for A24, but you don't need to sequelize everything. Just take that, put it into another original idea, and let's move on. Having said that, they did that with this movie, and I was disappointed. So maybe I don't know what I want. Katie, tell us, first of all, if you can differentiate, which did you like better? Talk to Me or Bring Her Back? Or is it just like you thought they were both great, or what?
I love Talk to Me. In fact, I you guys be prepared. If anyone has negative things to say about Bring Her Back, talk to the hand. Okay.
There you go.
Talk to the hand of Talk to Me. I love Talk to Me. And I was telling Mark, and I think I told you, Talk to Me was my favorite horror film of 2023. I have to say that was a weak year for genre films. The first 6 months was just really like, TikTok, or is there going to be something horror that's actually like any good that's going to come out? I mean, because the 2022 had a lot of excellent films. 2023, I'm like, yawn, what's happening? And then Talk to Me came out, and I was like, and thank you for making me a liar. Yes, this is it. This is amazing. And then when we saw the Philippou brothers, I mean, just their energy and excitement, and that, I don't know, it's just that youth exuberation, and it's not naivete, but it's like they still love everything. They haven't been like made bitter by the Hollywood machine and everything going on. And I loved that. And I love the film. I mean, watching it and not realizing like, oh my God, this is a long shot. It's like, this is still going, and it's like 5 minutes in. Oh, okay. That's something new. I was not expecting this. And I love Bring Her Back. I thought Bring Her Back, I'm not sure if I think it's the better one. It may be I think as a sophomore effort, it's freaking kicks it out of the park. I think it honestly cements both brothers as like, genre directors that are going to have a lasting effort in this, in horror. And I do not think they are a sequel. I think this came out second. I think it was partially filmed, or I think both definitely were written at the same time, because seeing at my screening, they had a Q&A with the directors, and they talked about how this is, I think this was definitely one of the more, this may have been written first. It's definitely more personal, about a cousin who lost their 3-year-old child, and just the absolute horror, and they're just completely inconsolable, and what do you do with your life afterwards, and if you can even go on. And they decided to make the two films kind of like as an inspiration of what happened there. And I can see this and definitely in Bring Her Back. I thought Sally Hawkins was great, but yeah, I'm going to be the hype the hell out of this one on the panel. So be prepared, fellas. Be prepared.
Well, no, we need some diehard enthusiasm for this movie, because it's not coming from me. Now, I wanted to love this film. I didn't see that Q&A that you were at, so I didn't get the story about the cousin. But I don't quite see that translated to this movie. There is a bit of, well, let's rewind the tape a bit. Katie, if you would be so kind, can you summarize, synopsize, what the hell is Bring Her Back about?
So Bring Her Back is about a stepbrother and sister who, after they find their father dead in a bathroom, are going to have to be split apart because the older brother is not quite 18. And instead of being split apart to go to foster homes, the older brother wants to stay with his younger sister, who is visually impaired. They are the sister there is a foster mother who is very enthusiastically like all prepared to have the younger sister. Not very much with the brother, but she's going to take them in because, there are two of them and she doesn't want to necessarily split them apart. When they arrive, there is another foster child there that they were not told about, and that is nonverbal. So it is a full house, but it comes very apparent quickly that not all is what it seems in the house. There's a lot of not necessarily misdirects, but there's a lot of trust issues and a lot of things going on. And we soon find out that the foster mother has some very nefarious plans for, if not both children, definitely one. And that comes out very quickly and with great practical effects.
Yes, I agree. And there is, it opens with this kind of a weird cult video, VHS cult montage of something happening with these adults, and it looks like people are being tortured or there's something going on. There's folks who look like they're having seizures, and at the end of the movie we find out what the master plan is. And it's cool and everything, but I was left with questions. Now I said I was kind of fuzzy on what happened at the end, so I'm going to need you guys to walk me through that. But essentially what it comes down to is more or less, if you took Pet Sematary and wrapped it up in a satanic cult of some measure, you'd pretty much have this movie. Because the woman, Sally Hawkins, and what was her character's name? Laura, that's right.
Yes.
She wants to use Oliver, who's our mute child, who ends up, it turns out he was a missing kid. He'd been missing for like a couple of weeks or so. It was not that long that he disappeared, but he's in this house. And Laura actually worked with troubled youth and in that kind of foster system. And she, like one of her ex-coworkers, comes by the house in the climax to kind of investigate, as happens a lot in these kind of movies. And she discovers Oliver and is like, oh, that's the little boy that was missing. Oliver is a vessel for a demon that apparently has been planted into his body. And once Laura is able to take Piper, who's the blind girl that we mentioned, the foster daughter, get her into the backyard pool to reenact the drowning of Laura's daughter, who was also blind, because that's part of the ritual, is you have to take the new vessel, kill them in the same manner as the person that you are grieving, while the demon vessel is nearby, and then transfer the other spirit into the body so you can kind of bring her back, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly how that works, because where is the soul of Laura's daughter, and why is the cosmos allowing it to be reborn through the machinations of a demon? Help me out here.
the demon is the tool, basically, or fallen angel, as she referred to it. It's demon, but the demon is basically the tool to transfer. She had the body of her daughter frozen until she could get a new vessel. And so when she thought it was time, she had Demon Oliver, chew a piece of his daughter, because what I picked up is what has to be done is the demon tool has to consume part of the old person, the person who died has to consume part of them. And then that's why he had such a big belly at the end, because he was carrying the soul. And then he transfers it to the new vessel. And then I think when he does that, the demon goes away. It's like his job.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to keep him around, and that was part of her problem. Was she's had this guy around for a while, and he was hungry and such. And
also as long as he's as long as the demon is in the circle,
there's like a salt circle around the house.
There's a salt circle, that she puts around the whole house, which was impressive.
That's a lot of salt. Yeah.
It is, yeah, because it's a big property. Because it's not just around
Yeah.
the house; it's like around the property because there's room to kind of walk around, and I think that's one of the, whereas Talk to Me had a pretty simple. It didn't worry so much about the theology or the afterlife machinations, but it did have a very simple manner with which these otherworldly spirits interacted with the realm of the living. You go to a party, you shake the hand of this thing after saying a couple of phrases, and a demon or a spirit jumps into you. You can hang out with it, but if you spend too long with this thing, then bad things happen. Very simple. With this, okay, you've got a demon who consumes part of a dead body in order to transfer the spirit of that body, the former spirit that used to live in that body but is no longer part of that body, into a new vessel. Where is that spirit? Why does consuming a body, which ostensibly does no longer have a soul in it, I don't understand how this works. It doesn't quite make sense to me. The rules aren't really spelled out. I should say, the way it's supposed to work mechanically is spelled out, but I don't think any of the underlying, I don't think it's been thought through in terms of an underlying plan or theology or even like demonology or something that makes sense. Maybe we're not supposed to think about that. It's just supposed to be like, oh, look, it's the gross Oliver kid and all that. But when you step back and think about it, like, why would this demon have the ability to put a good-hearted person's soul into the body of something else, which would just be a reanimated bastardization? Like, what is operating here?
I mean, I think when you're talking about bringing people back, good or bad, it doesn't really matter. And I mean, I understand what you're saying, that it's like Kathy is, an innocent and all that stuff. And to extent, so was her mother. And that's one of the things that I love so much about the film, is that you have this character, Laura, who, at times is she's a mother. She's a mother, and she's being a mother to her foster daughter. She's trying to be like a confidant and like, really trying to, or we think she's trying to like break through to, sorry, I'm missing the names.
Andy.
To Andy and Piper's
Andy's the older brother.
Yeah. But then, when you actually look at it, it's like, it's all bullshit. Like, she's just using him and like, there's no trust. But at the same time, she is grieving her daughter so much. And she is such like an empty person that I hate her. And yet I honestly feel such sympathy for her. And I think they do a very good, I think the directors do a very good job of that.
They do a good job of setting up the sympathy for Laura. I mean, you understand her motivation.
Yeah.
And I do like the fact that it is almost implied she's not part of this cult at all. Like, she happened upon this VHS. Like, this was something, because she said she searched everywhere to try to figure out a way to, first practical ways, the other way, she wants her daughter back in some way. So, she could have come across the VHS in any way. You can buy anything on the internet. For me, I guess part of the problem I had is I never got the impression she was trying to do anything with Andy outside of she had some ill will towards him, either because he was a man, because she didn't have a husband in her life anymore. Something happened to where she either didn't like him because he wasn't part of her plan or whatnot, but I never got the impression at all that, she really wanted anything involving Andy was a false front for some other reason. And we find out later with that. And in fact, Andy, I think, is the reason why I didn't enjoy this film as much as I did, not because of his performance, not because of the character. The decisions they do with Andy just didn't click for me. Like, I feel like there's something missing in this film about Andy to explain some of the behavior he had. Because one of the things is, at one point, she opens up his phone and she uses the Face app. And now I'm a sound sleeper as well, but she literally opens his eyes to get the face to unlock his phone. That should have at least stirred him or woke him up in some way, and it didn't. And there's implied
drugged, though.
But that's the thing is, if he's been drugged this whole time, they didn't establish that right away. Later on, you kind of guess, okay, maybe she has been drugging him the whole time and then pouring her own pee on his crotch to make him think that he's peeing himself. I get that, but there's just this missing element with Andy and her that just didn't click for me. And some of the things Andy did in general, he's literally talking to someone and he never went back to his friend to talk to him saying, hey, this is some shit that's going down. He never makes really as much of an effort until later on to go, there's some weird crap going on in this. Yeah. I mean, for what he was in the situations they were in, for how they establish him in the beginning as being very protective of his sister, it seems to fall a little bit by the wayside when Laura enters the picture, and then we get Oliver in there as well. I think that's the core of why I didn't enjoy this as much as I could have, is because the Andy character was felt like this just extra like skin tag on the film that was only there to be there at the very end to get the social worker to the house.
No, I see what you're saying, Mark, and I think the main issue I have with this movie is coming out in this conversation, because what it feels like to me is sort of like a Tarantino film, especially in his earlier days, like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and it influenced a generation of filmmakers in all the wrong ways. It became a thing to Tarantino a movie, which is to take a straightforward film and you cut it up into non-sequential chapters, and then by the end of it, everything kind of makes sense. It feels as if Bring Her Back, they wrote the film in a non-sequential Tarantino method and never went back to make sure that it worked in a linear fashion. You write the film straight, and then you find a way to divvy it up and play with the time, because you've got your underlying structure there. You can reshuffle the deck, but it all makes sense. Here, much like with the logistics of how this body swapping thing works, to what's going on with Andy, to a number of other questions that I have, I think come back to this feeling that I have. By the time I got to the end of the movie, I'm like, okay, this is where we're going. All right, I don't feel anything. This doesn't resonate, mostly because of the Laura character. Now, I understand being stricken with grief, but, and this goes back to what I was talking about structure, they keep showing she's got like a tattoo or some kind of marking on her hand, I believe, which almost implies that, because this is before we know anything about what she did or her daughter, it's still possible that she is a straight up villain who's messing around with demons and not the grief-stricken mom. So the tattoo on her hand is a red herring in terms of the film, the audience experience, oh, maybe this is the sign that she's in the cult, and that's tied to all this imagery you saw in the beginning, and our characters are really in trouble. Characters are in trouble, but not through any kind of malicious act. But it does call into question, why does she have those tattoos? Is it related to anything, or is it just something she got in Bali when she was 17 on vacation? Right? But here's the thing. When it is revealed that she found this ritual and enacted it and is going to try and carry it out, my question is, yeah, I understand grieving. I don't understand coming across a videotape in which you clearly see demons being brought forth and murders being reenacted and all this weird stuff, and thinking, yeah, that's a really good idea for getting my daughter back. If you go to the Pet Cemetery idea, yeah, it's adjacent to that, but it's just a matter of, okay, they take the body, you bury it in this special cemetery, and then they come back to you. That's fine. But there's 6 different other weird, horrifying steps in this movie that, even if you've gone completely around the bend, which I feel like I need to see more of Laura's descent into madness, because I just don't buy her as a character. I'm really sad, and now I'm going to murder people and bring forth demons because I'm going to get the soul of my daughter back. The theology doesn't make sense. I don't buy her actions. Now, it's wrapped up in a pretty effective horror movie until everything kind of comes together, and then you're like, what the hell am I watching? That's my stance. Katie, jump in with the defense.
Hard disagree. First off, with the Laura character, yes, it is very much established that Laura did not want Andy. And even when Piper and Andy arrive at her house, she, you know, gives Piper this giant hug and all that stuff. And then, and when they take a selfie together and all that stuff, it's like Andy's face is very much blocked.
Right.
That to me is like, okay, yeah, but he's not there for Laura. He's there for Piper because he wants to make sure it's like, he's got like 4 months. As soon as he turns 18, he will establish, you know, a dwelling with Piper and stuff like that. He has a routine with his drink. And, you know, he has major PTSD with his dad. They have a very tumultuous relationship that we don't know about. We don't have that exposition until, you know, later on in the film, which I do like. And it's even that exposition that he knows, but Piper doesn't know. It's like because he wanted to, you know, hide that from Piper. So when he's, it's like, it's that last message that Andy sends to Piper. He just wants to let her know everything. So there's no secrets. And he like, just so she knows, no matter what people are saying about him, no matter what people, you know, are trying to convince her, this is what really happened, you know, grapefruit, all of that. And I love that. But I also, it's, you know, it's the manipulation. Like I said, it's, you know, Laura is very good at her job. She gets people to like open up and spill secrets and stuff like that. But then she also uses that against them. And what we don't know until you have the, was it Peggy or something? The social worker that is her friend, Wendy, when she comes by, she's like as Mark said, you know, Andy wakes up and he's like pissed his pants and all that stuff, but he's like, he doesn't know what's going on. Again, shock, PTSD, a lot of stuff. Who knows? But what we realize is that Laura's been drugging him from day one. It's like she's in control of every single aspect of this. And it's not that she's just automatically killing people. That gets up. She doesn't do that until she's at the very pinnacle of like whatever her plan is, you know, this whole plan to like bring her daughter back. It's like if it's about to go out the window, it's like she just needs to do this to like bring Kathy back and then it'll be fine. I mean, yes, that is killing Piper, but when Wendy and Andy are going to you know, completely derail that, she's like, all right, well, this is what I have to do. And it's not only how Wendy dies, which is very graphic, but it's also the way that Andy meets his demise, that it's just such that, and I bring it up because anytime I think of a film where it's like no one wins, this is really like, come on, we got to have some sort of light. I always think of like any sort of like French extreme horror where it's just like, Jesus Christ, can you just give somebody a break? Like, really? They're that close. They're that close to what's happening. Yeah. And then you do that? Oh my God, you are just pure evil. You already screwed up this kid. It's like he's gone through all this. And I mean, when they, Laura so much infiltrates herself in their lives, especially like at the funeral. I mean, she's barely known them like a few days. And like what she's proposing that Andy does and stuff like that, like that is just some Machiavellian manipulation again.
Lay that out for us.
So when they see Andy, it's Andy's dad. Piper's mom was married to him, so they became brother and sister and stuff like that. And what Piper didn't know is that Andy's dad was violent towards Andy. And because of that, there is an instance where Andy was violent towards Piper one time when she was little. He immediately regretted it. He took it back and he was like, ever since then, he's been her like number one protector. So when Andy's dad is laid out with an open casket, they have the funeral. Like Andy and Piper have no family. So they're there. And then Laura goes to the funeral, not to be with them, but actually is trying like, and tells Andy that he has to kiss his father because this is the last time that he will see him. And you need to make sure that you, you know, feel that and take a little bit of his soul with him and stuff like that. And it's just so uncomfortable and so like skeevy. And then what does she do? She kisses his dead corpse. And it's like, girl, you don't even know this man. And then she also cuts his hair. And at one point in the film, she's feeding it to Andy. And it's like, my God.
Okay.
It's
But
like,
here's, let me ask you this, because
Yeah.
I remember that now, but I'd forgotten about it. But again, going back to structure, knowing what we know about Laura and the kind of person that she is, and she's not evil, she's not the cult leader, she's not devious, she is a grieving woman who went to extremes to bring her daughter back. What sense does any of what you described make as a character? Because those are the actions of an evil, manipulative person who, when you're watching the movie, because that's earlier on, you're like, oh, this is leading up to something good. You're like, wait, no, she was just a traumatized, kind of nice innocent until this tragedy happened, and she went to a very weird, desperate place to bring her daughter back. None of that lines up with, I'm going to make you kiss your dad's corpse and later feed his hair to you.
well,
Unless
I mean,
that's part of a ritual that I don't know about.
he doesn't know that she's like feeding his hair, but I mean,
I'm talking about what we know. Why would her character do that?
because she's an evil sea bag. I mean,
But
it's like,
is she? Because
That's the thing.
we're in contradictory territory here.
but
Because
that's the thing. It's like when we're at the beginning to see her already do this, and then we know she obviously doesn't like Andy, and she wants to have Laura, and she wants to have Piper because of her. It's like because of her daughter Kathy, who was also visually impaired. But then when she's like, trying to bond with Andy and all that stuff, but we realize that bonding was all a lie. It was all a mistrust so that she can use whatever he said against him. And it's like, that's this whole thing. It's like from the get-go, she's like always just manipulating, because it's all an agenda. It's like, it's the perfect girl. Like he's just a misstep, but he has to be there because Piper needs to have that savior and needs to have, it's not Laura's fault that Piper has someone who loves her more than anything. And I don't know. I just loved it. I got it. I thought it was like so well done. And the practical effects were just crazy amazing.
Oh, we're going to talk about that, the knife.
Again,
but Mark,
talking it out with you guys and what you're saying, Katie, and I get what you're saying, and I had no problems with the Laura character, and I finally realized just tonight talking to you, because I was trying to figure out what is it about this film, why didn't it hit me? It's still the Andy character, and I don't know if they were trying to go for writing a teen differently, just to portray a teen differently, but especially at his age and what they establish as him being protective with Piper, the awkward scene at the funeral, a teen wouldn't even have put up with a quarter of that, even with the PTSD. He would have walked out. He would have walked away from Laura or told Laura, get the hell away from me, because she didn't know. And he doesn't, as much as he's protective of Piper. And I understand there's the abuse from his father, not, his mother. And I get that Laura is an authority figure of sorts in the family. At the same time, the way they set up Andy and then how he acts was just very inconsistent for me, and felt like that's not how that would play out, and that it's playing out specifically for the fact this is a horror film and not being an actual character. He's just doing that so Laura can be very creepy and manipulative with his dad, versus him saying, get the hell away with me, because he barely knew her. He knew her like a total of a few days at most.
48 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. And they'd already had a number of awkward encounters to that point. Now, Katie, one quick thing. Mark, I agree with what you're saying. I think that if he had flipped out, she had made this suggestion and he had said, get the hell away from me, that would have been a stronger moment because she could easily say to the other people at the funeral, I don't know. He just started yelling at me. I mean, his dad's right there. I'm just paying my respects. And he attacked me, you know? Okay. Sorry, Katie, go ahead.
No, and that's what I was going to say. Mark, I can understand what you're saying, that in a normal situation, he would have said, get the hell away from me. However, he has a record, and that was already a big mark when he went to Laura and stuff, that that the social worker brought up, because he was sent to, or he was not arrested, but he was they took him away for a little bit because of what he did to Piper. So he already has that circumstance. So they will automatically say he's got, and they bring it up several times, like he has a history of violent behavior that happened, that did happen 6 years ago. It never happened since then. But that one mark is like, and then, you know, I mean, throughout, she keeps goading him to like try and do something. And that's
sorry, go ahead.
No.
And that's the thing with that. But with that one scene, if he didn't want to make a scene and make it feel bad, he could have just walked away. It regardless of, okay, so he doesn't want to be violent in front of everybody because he's got a record. He easily could have walked away and gone to Piper, and she could have still played it off as, wow, you know, well, you didn't want to spend time, you know, be loud or whatever towards it and have him ignore her. His behavior towards Laura, I guess for me, is probably one of the biggest factors. Was the fact of the way they set him up, and then what he does, even with his record. There's other more subtle ways he could have behaved to show his rebellion against her that he doesn't. And, you know, especially with, I'm sorry, but if he was suspected at all, even if he's drunk, freaking put your weights in front of the door. Okay. I'm sorry if you're sleeping there. He felt off about her to begin with, and he didn't quite, you know, and that's what that's that piece of the puzzle with me that didn't quite fit. Everything else, I got the characters. I loved the Piper character. I love the Oliver character, who I'm sure we'll talk about, you know, Laura. I liked all of that setup, but having Andy's character in there, he, like I said, just felt inconsistent enough to me to where I wasn't buying that he was going to be just acting the way he did, until the one scene that felt natural was when he punches the wall, because she eggs him on so much and gets him frustrated, and he punches the wall. That scene felt natural. I'm like, where has been this build up to, you know, because suddenly he triggers off of her. And I was just like, I would have liked to see just him show a little other things of being far more resistance about this situation than he was, or if not, having a little bit more of interaction with him, and just him and Piper, where he's saying, I'm trying to be patient and be my best with this situation with Piper for you and whatnot. But we don't get that moments. He gets very little time with Piper after he's with Laura alone, just the two of them. And I guess I just needed some more of that moments, because they set him up as being the protective brother. And I just didn't feel it once the Laura got involved in it. It wasn't really there till the very end, when he finally gets out and gets the social worker, you know. And I think that if you take him and either handle him differently or remove him, I love this movie a whole lot more. But having that extra element in there of him and how they handle him, I guess just me personally, I wasn't getting it, and it was taking me a bit away from everything else.
And I mean, we'll agree to disagree, because for me, as soon as the Laura aspect did come in, like, he never had a chance to be alone with Piper, and he didn't want it. He wanted to make sure he was there with at least, you know, around the same thing with Piper. And Piper had no idea regarding his, you know, the violence that the social workers had. So when he can't get loud, he can't get mean. And it's like, even when something did happen, Piper was like, Andy, what are you doing? Because he knows all he has to do is just wait a few more months until he turns 18. He can put up with this loon. He can put up with this crap. He just has to wait a few months until he turns 18. and then he can file to be her custodian, and then it's all that. But if he gets a complaint, if she tries to say he's violent, which she goats him into doing all that stuff, then that's out the door, and Laura could have Piper forever.
And again, I get those moments, but like he was talking to his friend. He didn't mention anything to his friend on his phone that, hey, this is what's going down. He didn't have, and that's the thing. If she would have taken like his phone away permanently, okay, but he's got a connection to the outside world regardless, that he could be communicating some of the weird shit that's going down to, and even have his friend talk him down. I guess I just needed a couple more of those moments. If I would have had some of those more moments like you're talking about, Katie, where he's trying to toe the line enough to just wait those months, I guess I just needed a couple more of those beats in there, because it just didn't feel right with him. I don't know why. I don't mean to be a stickler on it and hang it. We can move on and I'll shush on it. But
no, but this is, I mean, this is what we do here. We're talking about what works in the movie, and I think the reason I'm not dwelling on the kind of the horror aspects of it is because for me, none of that matters if you don't have your characters right. Now, Mark, I hate to agree with you, and I'm but no, I mean, it's not a personal thing. I'm just saying I'm going to propose something radical. I think this movie, to your point, is much stronger. As much as I love the acting and I like the idea of the character, I feel like you take Andy out of this movie, it is a much stronger film, because I think you've got Piper alone with Oliver, because she can't see anybody. She knows there's someone else there, but he does not speak. And so she's in the dark about a lot of things. And you would have to rejigger it, maybe introduce a tertiary character like a neighbor to kind of fill there is going to be an Andy shaped void in here. But I think having that constant presence, living with them, inconsistent behavior, because again, the screenplay I think was written out of sequence and never properly cleaned up. That's where I stand. I don't know. My other question, this comes up at the end. I didn't think about it until
I can't do the middle one.
She can't. Nice. I knew what she was doing with the middle finger. So.
At the end, we discover that Laura's daughter's corpse is in a freezer? In that locked up. Okay. How? Sally Hawkins weighs 60 pounds. How the hell did she get her daughter's corpse out of the cemetery without anybody noticing? And did she have assistance from this cult? I don't know. But again, I'm like, none of this makes any sense. And I'm fine with some horror movies like, we don't explain where the hand came from and talk to me and all that stuff. That's fine. You are allowed, I think, 2 mysteries in a horror movie. This movie has 17. Sorry.
And you know what? The body thing... Well, it was the other thing that I had messaged with Katie on the other thing that was for me kind of head scratching was the whole social worker angle in general. I understand she's a former social worker, but they didn't have anyone visit sooner. They didn't check that they saw Oliver at the house. I've heard of and know of some folks who were foster kids, parents or whatnot, and they went through kind of a rigorous background check for one, but second of all, near the end with, again, Andy, I'm sorry I bring him up, I apologize, but again, Andy finally makes it. He does something awesome. Like, okay, great. He tracks down, he gets away, he gets to the social worker. This kid's got a history of being kind of, in the eyes of them, he's got a record. And they allowed her to leave with this guy without an escort of a police or person of some sort to go along, even ride along with them. And maybe it's the U.S. because this is shot in Australia, I think it is, or what?
Yeah, Australia or New Zealand. One of the two.
Australia or New Zealand. Maybe it's just me, but I'm from Milwaukee, and where I grew up, when the social worker went with someone to visit a house, they were accompanied by at least one person of law enforcement, regardless of who it was. They would be there with them. And that was just with a visitation, just going to investigate at the house. They would have someone with. And in this case, we don't have that, especially with his erratic behavior when he walks into the cop shop. People aren't kind of like turning a crooked eye to him, you know. So when those two go out to the house by themselves, I get it. I understand it. I watch many horror films, but at the same time, it was like, okay, I could see if it was he didn't go to the office, the cop shop where she worked, if he like knew where she lived and went to her house or something and then they went over, okay. But the fact that he goes to a law enforcement place and they go out for a visitation, she didn't bring someone regardless, because if this kid is going to flip out, she would want a social worker would want protection there, even regardless if you were going out to visit and having a false claim. And if there is something in there to where, you know, she doesn't believe in, which they do kind of set up, I guess I just didn't buy enough of it. Maybe give me a scene to where she says she's just going to take him home, and rather than do a visitation, throw a little scene in there. But we just cut from him saying, look, here's Oliver. She looks it up, and then he's like, oh, we're going to go out there. And I'm like, you don't bring anybody?
Well, that's an important case, because Oliver is officially a missing person.
Yeah.
So as a social worker, she would have called the police, or said, you know, we need
a cop
to
with her or someone. Yeah.
She would have talked to she would have talked to somebody. She would have talked to me. But no,
she needed the hand. She needed the hand to talk.
But aside from that, it's again, I think the performance and the dialogue go a long way, because I like the social worker, but the moment he shows up, I knew that they were going to go back to the house and the social worker was dead meat, because we've seen this in 100 horror movies. The best friend of the person. I mean, we saw that, Katie, in the movie that we're going to talk about in the future, which we've already talked about in the past, which is Dangerous Animals. That's a very similar kind of scene or setup. But yeah, I don't know. I again, at the end of this, I didn't have the same questions that I did at the end of Talk to Me. And it's not questions of like, ooh, I wonder, let me go think about these possibilities here. They're like, where was this? Why wasn't this thought through? This doesn't make any sense. Those kinds of things. And again, it doesn't feel like it's the same people who made Talk to Me, aside from, I promised we would get to it, some of the graphic violence in this movie is very impressive. Oliver, as the demon begins to manifest in his body, likes to chew things. I think in preparation for eating that corpse. And Katie, why don't you tell us about the knife? I know you've been itching to do it.
So in a way, for like, Laura actually takes Piper to go somewhere, so they are away from the house. And
wasn't it like a game thing, or like with other like?
No, they went to shop.
They went to shop. It's like
that's the first time. The game thing was later on.
Okay, that's right. Okay, right.
When Piper's like a freaking force of nature, man, it's like, I don't even know what that game was. It was like, damn, girl, you're good, and I do not want to mess with you. All bets on Piper in anything that she's doing, because hello. Yeah. But in this scene, Andy and Oliver are Andy's like making some food, and Oliver's there, and he was like trying to sort of have a bonding moment. He knows that Oliver can't speak, so it's like, you know what? Let's try. I'm gonna have you try some stuff. So he has a little bit of melon on a knife, and of course it's that quick like turnaround, because you don't expect it. And Oliver has, when he turns around, Oliver's taken the knife and it's just crack, has the knife in his teeth are cracking. Then he puts his face on the board, just molars and inside just cracking off, and woo! I mean, it's one of those things that it's like, you want to look away, but don't, because you need to see all the work I mean, it is good. I know a special effects artist in Chicago, and he was like, that is one of the best movies that is one of the best special effects I have seen all year long. Like, that is quite impressive. And it is like, honestly, if people look, I know you guys have issues with some of the story. I don't. I could, bring up my points why I think this works and stuff like that. I think we can all agree that those freaking special effects are goddamn impressive. And man, are they chilling. Like, I don't know. Do you guys not agree?
I had no problems with the special effects and practical effects and the horror elements of this, in all honesty. And again, I gave it 3.5 out of 5. It's watchable for horror fans. Absolutely. There's a lot of horror elements I really enjoyed. It was just some of the other elements of before, that kept me from really getting into the film because they were just so glaring. Don't get me wrong. Overall, it's still a solid modern horror film as far as the horror elements go. And the special effects looked great, whether they were the kid, Oliver chewing on stuff, whether it was the knife thing, which, okay, come on. I know you're 3 months away from 18, but even I know, just hand him the piece of fruit. Don't hand him the whole freaking knife, kid. Yeah. Again, Andy, come on. Again, Andy, it all comes back to him for me. I realize this now. Thank you for this therapy session. But
I think you've got a personal thing against the actor, Brian, or not Brian.
No, he
Mark.
was fine. It was just him. But no, Oliver and the special effects they do, the makeup effects they do on him later on when he comes out all with his belly distended because he's carrying the soul in that, the red eyes, his behavior, his performance. I mean, for a young performer like this and for what his character is, he nails what you want from this type of character. He nails the creepy, he nails the look, he nails the behavior. At no way, shape, or form do you see a little boy in here. He conveys that there is something else in this flesh suit going on at all times, really. And I'm very impressed by Jonah Wren Phillips's performance. Yep. And he was one of the highlights of this film for me was his performance. I was like, while I may not exactly like some of the writing, the gore and what he conveys, creepy as hell.
And I think it was eerie. The eeriest thing to me about him, I think, was the fact that he looked a lot like Mina Suvari with a shaved head.
He
does. Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
But his dad, Stephen Phillips, is actually Piper and Andy's dad.
Oh, in the shower.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Here's my thing about the knife scene. In the moment, very good. Mm. But as with all my other problems with this movie, it comes in the retrospective because I look at it now and it really is the frightening kind of gore centerpiece of the movie, right? It mirrors the head bashing scene from Talk to Me. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, am I going to be, is this a Philippou Brothers staple or is it going to be a Philippou Brothers cliche where I'm just sitting there waiting for, okay, here's the over-the-top gore scene, probably involving someone's face getting bashed in or mutilated, which is fine because it looks great. But again, in Talk to Me, it was like kind of shocking. And, oh my God, what's going on? And is he going to stop? In this movie, I'd already figured out that this kid was some kind of a monster. So it doesn't have that same kind of horror quality to it, right? And again, I will stick up for Andy because that the thing leading up to that was that I think before Laura went out, she said, never don't let Oliver out of his room. He kept him locked up in that room. And Andy comes by, he's like, hey, Oliver, you want to come out of there? You need to go to the bathroom or eat something. Oliver's thinking, I'm sure, I got to eat something. But it was just that moment of like, we don't quite know what's going on with this character, but we know he's just kind of like standing in his room at the door waiting for something. And I think that's a nice little bit of mystery.
Which there's an awkward cut in here involving Oliver that they never address or go forward with or have Laura even look in. At one point, Oliver smashes the window to, I think, his room or something and escapes. And we never go back to it. It's never addressed. It's like, I'm like, she locks him in his room and like he like smashed the window to get outside to the room, to get into where her daughter's body was in the freezer. And I'm just like, it never even like no one ever even notices, but I love the Oliver character. I like I like the mythology. I didn't need too much of the explanation. You know, her trying to follow the VHS. I actually like that as well, because it shows how she's bumbling this whole situation in general, trying to go off of the VHS of how to do this ceremony, but not really following through all the way properly, you know, because again, I don't think Oliver was the beast, and Oliver is intended to be around as long as he was. And while they don't initially say that, that's the impression I get, because he keeps wanting to go chew on the corpse of her daughter. He's constantly going to that room to chew on the corpse of the daughter because he's hungry. You know, and I didn't need those elements. I like the Oliver character quite a bit.
Well, and it's also interesting that Oliver is, he's the one who has, you know, the most positive arc in the film.
Thankfully,
because
yes.
At the end, like, yes, he is missing teeth. You can get implants, you know, that is fine. Believe me, I work for a dentist. Like, Oliver, come to me, sweetie. Like, you get the best ending of this entire film. But yeah, it's whatever. We know that there's something inside Oliver, but it's also his spirit and Oliver's actual, like, well, it's not even named Oliver. I forget. It's like whatever his real name is, but
Bird. His last name's Bird.
Yeah.
Because that's, yeah.
It's whatever's in him that he is not giving up, and he continuously tries to leave the property. And Laura keeps, that's why Laura has him like locked in his room and hitting his head and all that stuff.
See, and I liked that angle, because in that same scene with the knife and the melon, where I'm just like, Andy, just hand him the piece of fruit. Why did you hand him the whole knife? This kid is like 7. Anyway, I'm like, dumb teenager. But I did like how they did the angle of him writing the word bird on a piece of paper and how that came back around. Mm-hmm. I liked that aspect as well, showing that there is still this kid inside trying to fight his way out. Loved that aspect as well. Didn't love Andy being as dumb as he was, giving the kid. I'm like, dude, just take the fruit off. Yeah. But and the only reason I'm coming to that is the fact of it, that felt very like the blatant, as Ian said, here comes the gore scene. I love the gore scene. I loved how it looked. I loved everything. How we kind of got to that, I wish would have been just a little different, because I'm like, this kid is obviously has some challenges, even if you don't realize he's possessed. And Andy doesn't cue in on that at all, which again, I'm like, dude, really? Why would you just give him the piece of fruit? You know?
I don't know, because it's not like the first thing. It's like, if there's, I'm cutting up fruit, and there's like, I've handed kids like, or somebody, it's like, I don't think that they're gonna like grab the knife by, you know, that part, because even if, you know, they're nonverbal or something, it's like, you just don't think that it's one of those things that's like, well, I didn't think he was gonna hit me, or I didn't think he was gonna kill me, and stuff like that. I mean, it's not like that's the number one thought going through your head, that you go from this to, and there's blood everywhere.
I would. But he grabbed it before he turns around. He gave the knife to the kid before he turned around to get a plate for the kid, and he turned his back on a young kid who he knew had challenges, who was holding the knife. And while he didn't want to fight him because it would cut him, to turn your back on that, I'm sorry, I'm just like sitting there going, come on, dude. Even as a dumb teen, you're like,
right. And here's the thing. It's like, we've already established him in this kind of protector role. So I think he had been a bit more observant. It is a horror movie moment.
It is.
To your point, Mark, that sets up a spectacular moment. But as with my many issues with this movie, it just feels like something that's there because it's going to lead to something cool or mysterious. Your mileage may vary. Now, we were talking about this VHS tape, and this is where we're kind of start to wind down. This is another major problem I have with this. Okay. She's watching this VHS tape. She's studying it to figure out the ritual. Okay. Where did she get this tape from? Did she find it online? Did she stumble across it? Because usually in these kinds of movies, there's someone to say, here's this tape. you're going to watch it. Here's how the ritual works. Okay. Because if you stumble across the VHS tape and you're just watching it, you don't have any context for, is this a horror movie? Is this real? How do I study this in order to make something happen? There's no guiding force. I mean, going back to Pet Sematary, there's at least the myth, the legend that gets kind of passed down. Like if you bring your dead body out to this area and you bury it and you put the rocks on this configuration, then you go home and a couple hours later, something will come back to you. In this, and even in Talk to Me, you've got the ritual of the hand. In this, we just have this woman with this VHS tape and no explanation for why she thought it would work, why she thought it was a good idea, why she was not sufficiently disturbed by what she saw, if she did think it was real, to think it would work, because there are obviously demons being brought into human bodies after other humans have been killed. Again, grief is one thing, but this is...
They do have some dialogue in there where she said she was doing whatever she possibly could to try to find a way to bring her daughter back. And that was enough for me there for why she had the tape. I kind of wish... But
here's the thing, Mark, where, again, doing whatever it takes to bring my daughter back, that's still not enough, okay? Because that's step one. Step 3 is her enacting the ritual. Step 2 is how did she come across this ritual and how does she know what to do in terms of anything involving this? The tape is, as we see it in these kind of flash cuts in the beginning of the film, is very sloppy. It's very, like, there's all these weird languages being shown and cross cuts and quick cuts, and you don't get a really stable lock on anything that's going on. So how you'd be able to determine what to do in this, for this ritual, I would dare say it's impossible based on what we see of that VHS tape.
One, there's a lot that you can pick up on the dark web. Is that could be one. 2, she's worked in social services, and some of those, some of the people that are in there are kids. I mean, you can find, like, people do effed up things to other people, and especially as a social worker, it is a heartbreaking and much like a teacher, you don't get the appreciation that you should, and you also see a lot of things and experience a lot of things that you never want to
demonic resurrection and body transfer.
I mean, I don't know, like the dark web is like, there's some shit that goes on in this world that it's like, once AI really is functioning, we're done. Like, I mean, once they see the stuff that people do to each other, why are we going to be, why are the robots going to keep us around?
Well,
I don't know what that has to do with this tape, but sure.
What I will say with the tape is it's something I wish they would have handled it better, because I think if you've not seen any trailer, if you went into this film completely cold in the tape, the reveal of what was actually going on in their ceremony on the tape would have probably been a little bit more of a surprise or hook. But they open with it, but they don't show everything on the tape, and they show you flashes of what's going on, and then you PCR, oh, this is what's going on. When in all honesty, they really didn't need to do that. I think it would have maybe, and for Ian's point at least, set up of why she has the tape, not necessarily how she got it, but at least why she's watching it. We don't get the full thing till literally just before we get to the point where Oliver goes and gnaws off a piece of face of her daughter, that we get the scene of, oh, this is about transfer of a spirit to a body. We don't get that whole tape. And I think, I'm like, we already got that. I don't think we needed to see, oh, that's on the tape, that's why she's watching it. It's like, I think if they would have just played the whole tape, and then you're just like, huh, and then you're seeing what's going on, maybe that would have helped a bit. But the way they do the reveal at the end, by that point, you're just like, no, we figured it out already, guys.
I don't know. This sloppy, that's the word I keep going back to. Because, there is a difference between having something that's mysterious and then having something where I get the feeling the filmmakers either didn't go back and connect the dots for their own internal logic, because I'm sure that they had a story there of some kind about this tape and what this cult was. They just didn't kind of clue us in on it, or they forgot to put it in. Now, when it comes to that kind of stuff, I feel like there's a difference between something that's left for me to ponder, and then something the filmmakers either forgot to put in, or they figured it doesn't really matter because this is, people are going to be talking about the knife scene, not the videotape. But again, I didn't have any of these problems with Talk to Me. I think Talk to Me is a very tight film that has all of its ducks in a row, and that's why I expected a lot in terms of story and character and mythology and graphic violence coming into this movie, which is why it was a letdown. If I'd seen this first, I mean, like, wow, this is, kind of impressive. And then Talk to Me comes out like, wow, this is leagues better. I feel like this movie is several steps back, and I almost can't believe, aside from the setting, honestly, that it was made by the same people. That and the knife thing.
And then I could see it being made by the same people, especially with the brutality, and you have your kids in peril, which is a very easy tool, for horror to immediately get a reaction out of. I was happy. The film really helped save me a bit from really just like going, was the ending. I was happy that we got at least a bit of a happy ending with this film, because I was concerned. I was very concerned with this. And that was the problem I had, actually. And Ian, we talked about when Talk to Me came out. You and I are kind of on. I was kind of like I was with this film. I was like, yeah, it's okay. I didn't care for the ending of Talk to Me at all. And then this one, I enjoyed the ending more. I was happy with a more happy ending, especially for the Oliver kid. The fact that while he may need a lot of therapy and some reconstructive surgery
and dental work,
dental work, for sure, he's going to make it. They didn't give the impression like he was not going to make it. And you have Piper as well. Both these two at the end were the two I was kind of rooting for the most, and I was happy that they actually lived to the end. I was worried it was going to go for a very nihilistic ending, which a lot of modern horror really likes to do, going, oh look, nobody wins, ha ha. And it's just like, I'm just like, really, come on, give me someone to make this journey really worth it. And we get that here. And so I will say I really enjoyed where they came with the end. And you're right, Oliver's arc is almost more interesting than Piper's arc in many respects with this, as far as everything that you realize has happened to him. It kind of turns almost to his story more so than Laura or Piper's at one point, to where once you start finding out elements about the Oliver character, Bird, you're like, oh, suddenly I'm very interested in Oliver even more than just him being possessed demon boy. But it then opened a few other questions. But
I guess, but I mean, honestly, Oliver doesn't really have an arc. He got kidnapped, he got implanted by a demon, and they was set free. I mean, we don't know anything about him as a person. He is literally just a vessel. He's for the story and within the story. Katie, final word.
He's a fighter, but I would say I think that Oliver does have a better ending than Piper, because like I've said, even though Piper lives, what life is she going to have? Like, her brother was murdered, her dad is dead, the person that was her foster mother tried to kill her, and the social worker that tried to help her was also massacred. She has no other family. So now she's left alone in the world, and the end. And I know it's like the feel sad movie of the year, and I get that, because honestly, there were a number of people after my screening that were crying. I did not cry, but I was just like, wow, that really hit, because then when you see, the camera go up and you see Laura holding the decomposing body of Kathy, after she's like, let Piper go. She's like, what, she has that real, like, what am I actually doing? And she has the decomposing body of her daughter in the pool, and the police come in and do that. It's like, there really aren't any winners. And I think that's the point that it's supposed to be. At least in Talk to Me, the family got together, the son recuperated. How, I'm not necessarily sure, because he had a number of, like, he had his eye that I'm like,
I don't think any of that happened.
Oh, you don't think so?
No, I think that was
like a
that was
dream
the
sequence?
last hopeful image of our main character before she realized that she was actually in hell.
Mhm.
But help me out here, because again, I forgot most of this ending. How was the demon expelled?
The demon's expelled because
Oliver
leaves
goes across the salt.
Yeah, he fights his way outside of the circle, and then he drops, and that ends up pulling the demon out of him, because the demon's tied to the circle. Because we get that one scene earlier where Andy's trying to, they're trying to leave the house. He's like, yeah, screw this, we're going. And he takes him with, and the minute because he's going to take him to the hospital because the kid was chewing on a freaking knife and some wood. He was going to take him to the hospital. And the minute he crosses the circle, Oliver drops and is in severe pain, but he suddenly becomes very lucid and actually says something. So it's implied that whatever is going on with him is tied to the circle. And then at the end, he fights his way across the circle because of all the shit, because the demon or whatever was weakened, because the demon was holding the soul for so long. The impression you get is that he's weakened, and Oliver crosses the threshold, and no one's there to pull him back in over the circle, and Oliver stays there, and then finally you think he's going to die, but thankfully, I was happy even though he's been through hell, he lived. I was so worried when the cops came up upon his body. I'm like, oh, he's not, and then all of a sudden he's talking to him like, yes. Yes, I'm like, thank you, before you make me go drink heavily at the end of this film. Thank you.
See, Mark, the impression I'm getting is that sometimes the salt circle works and sometimes it doesn't. Because you're saying, oh, the demon was weakened because the soul was in its body for too long. Where was any of that? Again, nothing's explained to this movie. It's up to us to say, well, maybe it's that. And maybe he was able to, get out of the circle the first time and just like have a breakdown, and then he got back into the circle, is fine. But the second time it happens, it killed the demon, and everyone's problems are solved. Like, inconsistency. I don't know what the rules are here, so I cannot get engaged with this story. Unlike their first film, Talk to Me, which was very much laid out, but not in a way that, I don't need a dictionary or a manual or something, but it was relatively simple. Whereas here you've got salt circles and VHS tapes and, bodies in freezers and 65-pound women who somehow got them out of the graveyard with nobody noticing. Anyhow, we've got a couple of...
I don't know. Maybe she blew the gravedigger. I don't know. There's plenty of things that we could get. It's like she could have rented a hoe, or one of those things. Not, hoe. Isn't that thing called when the big
backhoe?
Backhoe and stuff like that. I don't know. There's tons of stuff that could have happened.
Yes, but here's the thing, Katie. In every movie that has glaring plot holes, you can apply the same logic. You can say, well, maybe there was a meteor shower, and that's why she didn't make it to the plane on time to see her boyfriend off. I'm saying it's sloppy. It raises too many questions that other films and another film by these filmmakers don't have these problems.
Agree to disagree.
All right. Well, David Wilt says, the title makes me think of that story, The Monkey's Paw, where the woman's son dies and she wishes for him to be brought back from the dead. Yes. And YRN says, off topic, but when there's another Academia Giallo? Well, YRN, since you asked, I'm going to be recording something special tomorrow as a Credito Extra, which will be coming out next Monday. So I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it is Academia Giallo related. And as far as a proper episode, I'm thinking sometime towards the end of this month. So stay tuned, and thank you for asking. But anyway, we're going to get out of here because it's another marathon live stream we've got going here. But I do want to say that next Wednesday, we're going to be back for a look at a movie that Katie and I agree on. I know. Stand back.
Very much agree on.
You're calling it your favorite film of 2025 so far.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's the second best, but I could very much be convinced that it is the best We're talking about Life of Chuck, the new Mike
Oh,
Flanagan
I
film.
thought you were going to talk about the Phoenician plan. I thought you were saying, "Oh, that one."
Oh, the Phoenician scheme? No,
Phoenician scheme.
I am not hearing good things about that one.
I actually skipped the screening because I was like, you know what? I don't know.
I've seen some reactions
a whole other
coming.
side thing. Yeah.
I'm seeing some reactions coming out of the Chicago screening. They're like people like all excited to go in, and at the end it was like funereal.
Yeah. That's kind of what I sort of picked up like from some things from Cannes. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna skip it.
Yeah. Well, so but definitely do not skip next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central. We're going to be talking about Life of Chuck, and by that time, I will have actually read the short story. Katie, we were talking last night.
Yeah.
I went to the library today. I found If It Bleeds, the collection. This story, and we'll talk more or less next week, is 60 pages long. I'm already a third of the way through it, and I don't want to jinx it, but I'm pretty sure this is the most faithful film adaptation of a book since Sleepers 30 years ago.
Really?
I mean, I'm reading it and it is like watching the movie again, with one exception, because it's a 60-page story that they have to spread out to a 2-hour movie. There is dialogue that is not in the book, but it structurally, in terms of the characters, I mean, it is a straight out. Flanagan is really now. I could get to the end of it and be like, well, he changed the ending completely, like they did with Dr. Sleep, and I'll be upset. But, right. But for now, and also, if folks out there have not checked out my sprawling 1,762 word written review at kickseat.com, I encourage you to do so, if for no other reason than to read my loving, generous, and definitive thoughts on Mr. Osgood Perkins, the director of The Monkey, which is also a Stephen King adaptation that came out this year. And
one of my favorites.
I know. I'm going to send that paragraph to you, Katie, because you might never speak to me again. And also, if you just can't wait that long for us to get the band back together, Katie and I will be back, I believe. Katie, you're coming on with me on Sunday?
Yes, on
7:30 p.m. Central.
Yes.
We are going to be walking the stage with our final Class of 95 movie, Empire Records. We're going out with a bang, so dig out your flannel shirts and your sponge LPs, and we'll see you there. And as I mentioned, we talked about another movie that's coming out this Friday.
Yes.
Called Dangerous Animals. So look for that on Friday morning. And yeah, this is we're spending more time, I think, Katie, with each other than like with any other people. This is nuts.
Yeah, but, go see Dangerous Animals in theaters. I wish I could have seen it in theater, or I may try and see it in theater. And I will say this: I know you guys have been poo-pooing all over my movie.
Philippous.
Yeah, Philippous. Talk to the hand regarding that. But the only and major negative I would say about the film is that it should have been released on Mother's Day weekend. That is one of the one of the major things. And in fact, they did have a Mother's Day showing of it and stuff like that the directors had, that they gathered all their family and friends for a Mother's Day showing. Fitting. Yeah. And the thing is, it should have been released on that weekend. Yeah. That's my one negative.
I could see families going to see the feel bad movie of 2025 and then saying, hey, let's go do brunch. Yeah. It would I could see mothers saying to their kids, oh, well, this really makes me appreciate the loving bond that we have with each other, or don't talk to me.
Yeah.
On that note, I'm going to let everybody get out of here. Folks, thank you for joining us live and on the replay. Thank you to Mark and Katie and to all of Earth's Mightiest Critics. Their information is down below, so please follow them. They're all good people. They're great people, great friends. For putting up with my nonsense.
We're the best. We're the best.
I love that pin, by the way. It's amazing. And if you like this show, please like, subscribe, and all that business. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much. Take care. And I was going to say something about bringing her back, but I got nothing. I think I wasted it all.
Yeah. Talk to me about bring her back.
just be careful what you find in your chest freezer.
That's always good advice. Oh, and Andy lives. That's what I'm going to say. Andy lives.